Hey folks, this is Bailey from Dank Wargaming.
Hey, this is Heath with Team Table War Hawaii.
And welcome to the of Redemption, the Warhammer 40,000 Dark Angels podcast, where we try and provide Dark Angels players with the tactical and hobby skills that they need in order to compete and enjoy this wonderful hobby of ours. Now today we're doing a bonus episode from our regular scheduled monthly podcast because we wanted to let you know how Heath and I did with our new codexes since we got them recently. We finally got a couple games in, and we wanted to go over our new lists, the strategies we had going into the games, and whether or not they actually worked for us or not. Because I know for me, and we'll get into the details, it was not very pleasant. But that's sort of the idea that we had for this episode in order to help those of you that are at home either watching or listening sort of not have to make the same mistakes we did, and kind of get a chance to pick up on the hotness that we figured out that will make you enjoy your games a little bit better, so you don't have to struggle like we did, or at least how I did. I don't know how Heath did yet.
I did a little better. I only had one game, and it was tough. It was a very interesting list I played against, but I ended up being successful. I ended up being victorious. But I learned a lot about the army and about what I was trying to do, what I did and did not work. So,
All right, well, I will. For those of you that are at home watching, you'll be able to see this. But for those of you that are not at home, I will pull this up and go over this real quick. Sort of not in super detail, but just sort of a quick overview of what Heath has, and then we'll kind of go through it, why Heath did this, why Heath did that, and then see how it worked out on the actual battlefield. So I'm going to flip this over here. It's first time being super fancy, so I'm loving that part. So we're going to see Heath ran. Oh, got to get past my list on the thing. So Heath ran a Ravenwing Outrider detachment with Primaris Chaplain on bike, with Samael as his warlord. He ran the absolutely essential Ravenwing Chief Apothecary. He ran. When I looked at it, I hope I got this right from reading the list. It was it's a 4-man Black Knight unit with a grenade launcher.
It was 5-man Black Knights, 4 of which had plasma, 1 of which had a grenade.
Okay, so there might be a tiny mistake there, but we'll make it through. And then 2 5-man bike squads that had 2 melta-guns, and then the sergeant had a combi melta, so there's technically 3 melta-guns in each one of those squads. There was a 3-man squad of Outriders, because that's all you're allowed to do with those, sadly. Then we had Ezekiel with a bunch of the new Dark Angels powers, some of the buff ones, some of the debuff ones. So Aversion, Righteous Repugnance, and Engulfing Fear. Then a Primaris Librarian that was using the Hero of the Chapter take Rites of War, so his characters and core units at OBSEC. And then Might of Heroes and it's the one that's, what do you call it? I can't...
Psychic Fortress.
That's what it is.
6-inch aura of a 5+ invulnerable save.
Yeah, my window got kind of cut off, and I don't want to mess up the stream, so I was like, oh no. Then 2 tac squads, 1 with a heavy bolter, 1 with a las cannon, 5 blade guard vets, 5 of the assault variant hellblasters, and then an impulsor with a shield dome. All right, I like this because some of this stuff is stuff that I ran. Oh, and then he took Hero of the Chapter on his chaplain and gave him the Calibanite Knight rule, so that he always wounded infantry and bikes on a 2-up. All right, so I like this Heath a lot because there are definitely some things that you did that I did. Getting the wizard in there, getting a wizard in there or a librarian in there with the Dark Angels powers. I liked that. I liked the chaplain because I think that chaplain on bike is just ridiculously good, but I don't think that he's always essential because I just ran a game recently running the Interrogator Chaplain Jump Pack. So you switch out the keywords where you kind of miss out on something. You miss out on certain warlord traits, but then you gain a whole bunch because now it's the Deathwing keyword. So it sort of opens up and unlocks things. So I like that. Having the OBSEC bikes just sounds amazing, especially when you consider how fast they are. And one of the things that I've come to see is the fact that bikes aren't necessarily a turn 1 or turn 2 unit. We're talking 3, 4, 5, if not 4 or 5 unit. That's where their power is. Because I remember being at Adepticon 2 years ago now. It's so sad to think of it being that long ago. And I played this Eldar guy who's playing that Ynnari list. Or I remember when Ynnari did that thing.
Oh yeah, I do. With the double shooting, double moving jet bikes. Yeah, and Shining Spears. Sorry
Yeah,
if my beer's in the way of the microphone
that's
here.
all right. And I remember him saying
Man's got to
something
do
I've
what a
never.
man's got to do.
But he said something I've never forgotten, and I really took it to heart. He said, "Yeah, if we were playing a real, because I was playing the Long War Doubles, which is more of a fun,
Yep.
casual event." And the guy said, if we're playing seriously, I wouldn't have moved these bikes out until the end of the game. But because we're just having fun, I'll bring them out now and see what they can do. And they came out and they killed some stuff, and then my Brood Lord from my Tyranid army ate all of them by himself, which was really awesome. But I always thought about that. Wait, you wait and use your bikes at the end of the game, like you just hide them behind stuff, and then at the end they run out and do stuff. And I always kind of thought that was silly. But as we get into some of these games that I played recently, I'm like, you know what? Just kind of running them out there and trying to do stuff way too early just gets them killed and really just throws it away. So
I think there's an interesting concept to unpack there, and this is something that I noticed with playing railing bikes in the previous was because I was always trying to use light skirmishing cavalry where they would go up, like they shoot a thing, mix it up, and then they would die. And I'm like, okay, well there you go. But trying to force myself to exercise some restraint,
yes,
I found that the relative value of those bikes increases significantly. Like I don't know if I actually like put a mathematical value on it, but the later in the game they are, the more value they have because they've got a little bit of booty, right? They're T5, they got multiple wounds,
yeah,
and they're reasonably durable. Turn one, they're not durable because you got a lot of options. Your opponent has a lot of options with firepower going, and can do a lot of damage. But turn three, a lot of time, basically, the way the game goes, turn one is you're performing your initial maneuver. Turn two, you're kind of trying to set the stage for the trap, and turn three, that's when like the move is made, right?
yeah,
Sometimes in 9th edition, it's on turn two because you only got a 5-turn game. So if you haven't committed to what you're doing on turn 2 or 3, you're probably not going to win the game. So where bikes really let you dictate the pace of the engagement is that on turn 3, they've got movement and they can still change the pace. And if you have an intact bike unit or even two, especially with the movement shenanigans and movement tools that the Ravenwing have available to them, it doesn't really matter if they don't have enough guns. What matters is they can project power just by their presence. So if I can move a bike unit 20 inches with an advance or 28 inches, 26, 28 inches with full throttle and get those obstacle bodies onto an objective that my opponent is holding, I can flip it from a 15-5 to a 10-10 or maybe even a 10-0. And that is what ended up happening in this game is my bikes start like I started. So my opponent, Cass, is a gentleman and a scholar. He has playing Imperial Guard. And it was a very interesting Imperial Guard list, not the one that I've played against him before, which was like 10 Lehman Russ battle tanks. This was 3 detachments. He didn't start with a whole lot of command points, but he had a battalion of conscripts with it was a custom regiment with, I think the traits were the Lord's Approval and Slum Fighters. So every model in that detachment got an additional AP -1 when they were in combat if they were within 6 inches of an officer. And if they rolled a 6 to hit in combat, it exploded into 2.
Ooh, yikes.
And then there's 90 conscripts. And they just like, whoa, just on top of you. And then it's a priest to give them all an extra attack. And it's just a lot of bodies. And then there was another detachment of regular guardsmen, so 3 last cannon heavy weapon teams, and then 6 infantry squads with last cannon each. And they had, yes, that's a lot of guns. and they had the trait that gave them, they were always in cover, and they double shot, so they have rapid fire their last guns at 18 inches to 12.
Okay.
So it could put out a pretty fearsome amount of firepower that eventually Marines are going to fail saves. And then he had, in that same detachment, 2 units of 5 Bulgren with the slab shields as his kind of bully center assault unit. And then he had, supporting characters, a commissar, officer here or there. I don't really exactly remember. And then he had a third detachment of the Death Corps of Krieg. So he had 3 squadrons of 9 Death Riders that just showed up on your flank. And
how many points was this?
Like,
was this all under 2K?
This was 2,000.
Oh wow.
192 models on the table.
Oh my
150 of which were OBSEC.
Oh gosh.
And flanking units that are like Death Corps, like those Death Corps like horses. Holy crap! They are tough to 4 with like a 4-up armor save.
Yeah.
3 wounds and a 5-up feel no pain.
Yep. They're not easy to move.
Yeah, they're not easy to move. I was really surprised by that 5-up feel no pain. And he's got 27 of them in 3 squadrons and 9 with a squadron leader just in the flank. So I had to dedicate resources to securing my flank as well as try and push the center objectives.
Yeah.
So it was not something I thought I was going to end up seeing, but yeah.
That would have given me fits because I would not have been able to chew through all that, and then they have the ability to just maul you to death, especially with all those conscripts. Because if they have them all built out for melee like that, then they're also giving them the order where they fight in the shooting phase too. So you're getting fought by them twice.
Right. So the thing is, the conscripts only take orders of 4+. They have to roll to see if they get the orders off.
Okay.
So there is some of that, right? But like I said, I ended up winning the game fairly handily, actually. Like on turn 1, he 15-5'd me. Sorry, I think he 15-0'd me on turn 1 or on turn 2. But 3 and 4, I 15-0'd him, and we called it after turn 4. Okay. Because I was starting to pull ahead on the Ares, and I actually used Secret Agenda.
Oh, nice.
So, which actually turned out to be very helpful. So, the mission was from the GT 2020 pack, mission number 23, the Scouring. So it's 5 objectives, the old style hammer and ammo in it, so short edge to short edge, and it's a whole 2-3 mission. So I was like, how in God's name am I going to hold 3 objectives against 150 offset guard bodies with like 30 Space Marines? This is going to be hard. So I deployed fairly aggressively. I deployed all my stuff right on the line, right on the edge of my deployment zone. And I did not use any pre-game moves, so I didn't use the hunt. So it was, so he got first turn, which is what I wanted because I feel strongly that in kind of the cavalry style operation, especially if he doesn't have a lot of long range fire other than those las cannons, which admittedly there's a lot of las cannons. Then and I deployed my impulsor out of line of sight, so he really couldn't see anything on turn 1.
Yeah.
And he just kind of moved everything forward, moved, got to the middle of the board, which was within range for me to get into combat. So it's like, okay, you came to me, that's fine. And he had 30 bodies on 3 different objectives on turn 1. So what I ended up doing was I had my 2 tactical squads on my 2 objectives, just kind of scattered out a little bit, so they were within obscuring terrain, so they couldn't be seen. And my outriders were on my right flank, and I had a unit of 5 Ravenwing bikes on my center, and a unit of 5 Ravenwing bikes on my left. And in the middle, I had my Blade Guard that were walking, impulsors in the Primaris Librarian in the impulsor, and the Chaplain, the Apothecary, and Ezekiel walking right next to them. They were behind obscuring terrain at the beginning of the game, so they couldn't be seen. And I moved the impulsor forward, jumped the Hellblasters out, jumped the Librarian out, got with the Librarian within 6 inches of the center. I messed up, made a mistake. So I took one of my secondaries was Psychic Ritual, which is a bad plan because your 100-point Space Marine Librarians with all these awesome powers should not be wasting all that to cast the Psychic Ritual. So I made him. That was a bad choice on my part, but I'd never played with that many Psykers before, so I was like, hey, let's see what happens here.
Yeah.
I think that if you really wanted to do that, your best choice would probably be to bring an Inquisitor in the army, if you make that decision, Asmodai is going to have some words with you because really there, Dark Angels Captain, you're gonna have an Inquisitor.
Or if you
with
really wanted to go real
Yeah.
heresy, you run an Imperial Guard ally and run an Astropath or something.
I don't know if you want to do that because that's going to break your combat doctrine.
Right.
Whereas the Agents of the Imperium will not. And Agent Imperium, you get a 55. You can get a 55-point Inquisitor power. So, but I'm just not attached to doing Psychic Ritual. The other advantage to that would be that they can get a cool Warlord trait and a relic, which are maybe could be helpful, but I don't think you need them because all the Dark Angel stuff is so freaking good.
Yeah.
And they can ride in Primaris transports because of the by the order of the Inquisition rule.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah. So once again, I just don't think you need it. So but I jumped my Hellblasters out. I moved my bikes up. I moved the Blade Guard behind them, and the bikes got at the beginning of the battle round. The bikes got Samael's Ravenwing buff, so they rerolled all hits. So and then the Chaplain preached his Canticle, so they got +2 inches to charge. So they shot everything into that first unit of conscripts. They killed like 15 of them, and then they charged in. And he had to remove them from the back of that unit because if he removed them from the unit, he would have killed himself the objective.
Right.
So I felt pretty comfortable that I was going to charge in and get a hold of them. So I managed to deploy the Librarian so that his Rights of War aura was covering the Hellblasters, and the Hellblasters, 3 or 4 of them were within 3 inches of the center objective.
Nice.
So, like the bikes, I had 8 OBSEC bodies on that objective, and I killed those conscripts down to 8 bodies.
That's the way to do it.
So, and I seem to recall that there was something like 1 more guy got in there, and so maybe I lost one, but I'm pretty sure it was like 8 on 8, like a tie. So my Hellblasters split fire, shot both of the 2 conscript blobs with assault Hellblaster guns, which is just a waste of plasma. But I killed 10 guys in each squad with plasma. Clearly a bit of an exaggeration, but just killed a bunch of them. And then my left-hand Ravenwing unit killed the left-hand conscript squad down to like 10 guys.
Yeah.
And then my right-hand, Outriders on the right-hand side shot and killed 3 or 4 guys with their guns, maybe 5. Not as much of a difference, right? I just basically thinned a bunch of the front and made so that he was going to have to take a bunch of morale checks, and then he was going to have to spend the points to auto pass one of those morale checks. I kept my Black Knights as a mobile reserve, as a tactical reserve. I locked them up in the back of the board, 2 inches apart, to provide a disincentive to bring the Death Riders in from the back board edge. I learned later that that's not necessary because they can't come in from the back board edge. They can only come in from the side.
Yeah, exactly. With the new strategic rules.
Yeah. Yep. So, and because they have their own, he wasn't using strategic reserves. He was using their own special deployment rule, which says come in from the side of the board, not from any board edge. So it's not like the Space Wolf outflank. They have their own outflank. It's board edge only, not enemies deployment zone. So I didn't have enough resources to screen out all board edges. So I said, okay, I'm going to hold this board edge and make it so that if he wants to come here, he's going to have to pay for it. And if he wants to go over there, hey, I'm cool with that, right? Yeah. That'll at least get him away from where I think battle's going to end up forming. And so I gave him what I thought was 2 bad choices. So once I charged in my Ravenwing bikes, I killed them at about 8 at the end of combat, and I don't think I lost any bikes. And I just kind of sat there. Boom. So I held 2 objectives. He held 1 objective. Or he held 2 objectives, and we tied the center. So beginning of turn 2, he scored 5 points because he held 2. Right, and then he brought his reserve unit of conscripts up, another unit of conscripts up. That was the one that was on his left-hand objective, my right-hand objective. He moved them towards the center with Bulgrin behind them, just to flood me off the objective. And then he brought his Death Riders in on my right-hand board edge. So where my Outriders were. He brought 2 units in there, held the 3rd unit in reserve. And the just a second, I'm trying to remember. I didn't think about this.
I just while you think about that, I just want to point out it's interesting that you said that he got 15 the first time he scored, but then you immediately flipped it on him afterwards, because that falls into some of the stats that we were seeing from the Meta Watch on Warhammer Community in the last month or two. There was an article on there where I noticed that the percentage of people that were winning games were not people that were scoring 15 points at the first opportunity on that turn 2 command phase. The people that were winning the most games were only scoring 10, which makes me think that
really interesting.
Yeah, so across
Okay.
all the games that they were, that they were collecting their information from, it looks like people really do fall into a trap of overextending themselves, trying to overplay that turn 2 first command phase, try and get all 15 points and just bury somebody from behind. And it's interesting. It sounds like that's what happened in your game. That he came out, he put his bodies on everything, and you just started clearing them all out. I'm also, so did he keep his last cannon guys in the back? Like after you cleared out all those boys, did he just okay? So did he ever bring them forward?
He started to on turn 3, and I told him after the game I thought that he should have started moving them forward, because I moved that impulsor up to get everything out. He saw a target for the last cannons. He started shooting last cannons at it.
Yeah.
And that impulsor's shield dome, it takes some shots. He did more wounds that impulsor with las guns than he did with las cannons. Let me put it that way. Over the course of the game.
I needed your impulsor.
Oh man, I'm never gonna get that lucky with an impulsor again. But I was able to do my second ritual every turn, and my second objective was engage on all fronts. And it seems like a natural thing for Ravenwing, but I'm starting to think that maybe it's not. And I'll go into that again in a bit. I think we could talk about that afterwards. But the third objective I took was assassinate, because he had like 8 characters, and I used secret agenda, so he didn't know I had assassinate.
That's good. That's very good.
And so it was whole hella worth the 1 CP, because he spent the whole game thinking that I had while we stand, we fight. Yeah. That's what he kept saying. He's like, what do you have? While we stand? I think it's got probably while we stand. It's just like, what's your highest point units? This. And he just moved the Bulgard forward. He moved the characters forward. And Samael was able to, jump over, murder character. I think Samael killed 2 or 3 characters all by himself.
And let's point out that his warlord trait is fall back in charge, which makes that even easier.
Exactly. Right. And there are some interesting things that you can do with Samael. And other things I realized is that the chapter master rule, so your captain rule, which your chapter master have, says, hey, every core unit within 6 inches rerolls once to hit. Chapter master can give 1 unit in the command phase to reroll all hits. The thing is, it's not just core units, it's also character units. Mm-hmm. So Samael can tell himself to reroll his own ones to hit.
Get it together, man.
Yeah. Fuck up, chap. The boss. Okay, so yeah, you can definitely, realizing that chapter masters can reroll hits for characters has informed some stuff I plan on doing going forward. More on that later. So at the beginning of my second turn, I had Samael in the middle with the librarian in the middle. I lost all my assault hellblasters due to las cannon fire. I didn't make basically a single invul save or a single armor save. I had him stuck in a crater for cover. So a -3 from the las cannon, it's the same as that invul save that I didn't get to use because I was casting psychic riddles instead. And I had Ezekiel brought up. Yeah, he moved 6 inches, but in 9th edition, I'm starting to realize that not having the mobility isn't quite as big of a deal, because the format of the game forces everything to happen quicker. So I can move him up and get him in range of casting spells. And I moved the chaplain up, and I moved my apothecary up. And then after his first 2 units of reserves came in, I was like, okay, I don't really care if these 3rd unit of reserves come in, so I'm going to start bringing my black knights up. So I brought them up from backfield, and I moved my center unit, or my left-hand unit of Ravenwing bikes up to shoot and then charge his unit of conscripts that were on his right-hand objective.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had my unit of bikes tied up in the middle. I rezzed one of the bikes with the apothecary and healed another one. That apothecary is so good. It's so good.
Yeah, he is.
God. And Ezekiel, I tried to cast Engulfing Fear on his conscripts. It didn't work. I failed it. So I cast Righteous Repugnance on my Blade Guard veterans.
Yeah,
that went off. And wow, wow, that's a good spell. I didn't use the Cup of Retribution because I figured, hey, these guys are just going into conscripts. It's not gonna be that big of a deal.
Right.
So I got the Canticle of Hate off and with my chaplain, and just kind of moved up and said, okay, I'm gonna push you out. I'm gonna push you off the center. And my so his Death Riders on his first turn, his Death Riders charged with one unit into my tactical squad that was on my right hand objective, and the other unit and charged my they charged into my Outriders. Didn't kill them because Outriders are real tough, and I lost I think 1.5, right? Which wasn't that bad, but so my Blade Guard charged into the center. I made the charge for the conscripts. I got 25 dice, hitting on 3s, re-rolling all hits, wounding on 3s, re-rolling all wounds. I killed 21 conscripts, I think.
Nice.
Just gone. And then the chaplain, or one of the characters, just kind of wiped out the rest of the squad, and I left him with one conscript sitting on the middle objective, surrounded by 4 of my obsec bikes, and then I killed, I think, 2 of his, killed one of his characters, his Lord Commissar, in the middle. Once again, he didn't know I was using it playing Assassinate, so
yeah,
he just left his characters kind of up there. He's got this list. He's got to bring his characters up there anyway to support the conscripts to give them the Lord's approval. But yeah, God, man, those Blade Guard veterans supported by Righteous Repugnance are terrifying. Holy crap, they're good.
Yeah.
They just even their conscripts, who cares? They just murdered them. So all this stuff moves forward, and I hold the center objective very, very convincingly. I've pushed my left-hand unit of Ravenwing bikes up. I've taken his one objective from him on his right side. So at this point, at the end of my turn, he holds 1, I hold 4. So at the beginning of his turn, he gets 0 points.
Yeah, that's important.
So,
and now he has to come to you. So
now he's got the initiative. He needs to change the game state. All I have to do is survive it. So but he's got 2 5-man Bulgarian units. That's what they're supposed to do. Right? Okay. And by making that big power move, I forced him to commit his Bulgarin where I wanted him to go. And so he put 1 unit of Bulgarin right into my Blade Guard veterans. Like, these are going to charge these guys. This is gonna happen. This is gonna happen. It's like, okay, that's what they're there for. Like, they're supposed to be able to survive this. And then he brought his 3rd unit of Death Riders in. He charged them into my tactical squad, and then they fought my Outrider. My Outrider sergeant had 2 wounds left, and that was it. And then his other unit of Bulgarin charged into my 2nd unit of Ravenwing bikes that was on the left-hand side, my left-hand side of the board, his right, on his objective that I killed all these conscripts off of. So it was kind of a strung out charge. They didn't have quite enough to make it in there, but he made it in with 2 of them. And so when we went to do the fighting, he activated his 3rd unit of Death Riders first. So he fought the Space Marines. I made some decent saves, and I had 2 Space Marines left. Okay. I interrupted with the Ravenwing bikes and fought. I did 1 wound to a Bulgrin, but then I spent 2 more CP and I swift striked. And I fell back out of that combat and stop my fallback like 2.9 inches from the objective. So he could still activate and get to me and fight me because he declared me as a target for the charge, but it made it so that only 2 of his Bulgrin could fight me instead of all 5.
Yep.
And no matter what was going to happen, I still held that objective at the beginning of my turn.
Because you're OBSEC through the outright.
Because I'm OBSEC with my bikes and he was not. So it goes into the fight. He kills one of my bikes, and did 2 wounds to another one of the bikes. So I've got 3.5 bikes left. Oh no, big deal.
Yeah, that's great.
And at the beginning of and then his Bulgrin charged into my Deathwing Knights, my Blade Guard veterans, did 1 wound to them.
Ugh.
1 wound because Storm Shields, Inner Circle, and that 2-up armor save. He
was
did
your
1 wound.
Apothecary nearby?
He was, and I got the Feel No Pain.
Yeah.
Right, because I managed to get the Apothecary where it was. So they did 1 wound. So yes, it was not the result he was looking for, but I held the center of the board convincingly. And then in the ensuing fight phase, once again, I'm still under the effect of Righteous Repugnance. The Blade Guard veterans butchered the entire squad of Bulgrin.
Yep.
Just gone.
Yeah, they would.
Just gone.
Well,
and they consolidated forward and got pretty close. And their next turn, they're going to charge his Death Riders.
Well, and you're getting the +1 to hit because you were charged.
+1 to hit because I +1 attack because I was standing still. It doesn't matter because I was next to Ezekiel. Ezekiel gives you +1 attack if you're not under the effects of Shock Assault.
I was going to point out that if you didn't kill them, you were going to get that the next turn, and you were going to get to fight before them if that had gone on. So you actually were at an advantage. If you hadn't, you weren't necessarily disadvantaged by not killing them all on his turn, because on your turn you would have been able to give them +1 to hit. They would have had they would have maintained their Shock Assault attack, and then you could have cast the spell on them to go again.
Yeah. So they are dead killy, as the orcs would put it. So, and then performing that little, I spent all 4 of my remaining CP to do the Swift Strike shenanigan, but it held that objective for me. Mm-hmm. So I held 4 objectives, and he held 1. So beginning of my turn, it's a 15-0 again. I fell those Ravenwing bikes back. I brought my Black Knights in. I was just out of range. I didn't move quite properly enough. I didn't remeasure. I was just out of range to cast Repugnance onto the Black Knights because I really wanted to get in there and see if they could hurt the Bulgrin. And I moved to Assault Doctrine. So instead, because I wasn't in range, I tried to cast it on the Blade Guard. I perils. So I used a CP reroll, and I perils again. So Ezekiel, great job, man. I didn't get Engulfing Fear off once the entire game, but hey, what are you gonna do? So So the Blade Guard are just flat on dead killing. They charged in. They wiped basically the entire squad of 9 Death Riders. They had 1 horse with 1 wound left because he was making like 1 Feel No Pain with every pair of saves. So basically 3 hits to kill 1 horse. And even then, I killed 8 of them and did 2 wounds to the last one. So
nice.
And then my Apothecary had moved over, and he healed my Outrider Sergeant, brought the bike back. So my Outriders back to 2, and at that point, he's like, you know what? And Samael had jumped over, shot into one of his back units, then charged the lieutenant that was doing the investigate sites, or the whatever the special mission for the special objective for that one is, killed that officer, jumped over, got into combat, and it was and then my center unit of bikes that had broken free from the center objective got into his backfield, shot a unit of guardsmen up, charged it, and then charged another one, wrapped up, and started killing his last cannons. And he's like, okay, this game's over. There's no way. So I was ahead of him. I was ahead of him on points, even without revealing my secondary, that I had. That was secret. So I think my overall lessons learned are that the OBSEC the OBSEC bikes, the speed of those OBSEC bikes is of crucial importance, especially late game. And having those movement shenanigans and using that Swift Strike stratagem. Beautiful. So there's a couple of techniques that you can really pull out of this is that one, you can use it to protect the bikes in this situation, which is expensive because you have to interrupt to do it, and you have to spend the 2 CP. So it's a 4 CP trick, which is tough. But another thing you could do with it is you can use it offensively, is what I realized.
Oh yeah.
Because it'll work. It's not a core. You can use it on Samael as well. You could charge in, fight, and then use Swift Strike to get further deeper into his line behind something.
Well, and I'll tell you what I did last night. It's not the game, not one of the 2 games we're going to talk about today. And with the list, this is a completely different list. But I had Blade Guard out in the middle, and they were going to get charged by Khorne Berserkers, a Khorne Demon Prince, and a Hellbrute. And there was the 2 L shapes in the middle of the board, and I blocked it up with my bikes to keep them from charging my Blade Guard. They charged the bikes. With the 2 big things, the Berserkers charged the Blade Guard. The Berserkers fought first, beat up on my Blade Guard, and then I went, okay, interrupt, bikes fight, bikes kill some of the Berserkers before because I could set up to where I could target them, because he actually moved his guys close enough I could target them. So I tried to save the Blade Guard by killing off some of the Berserkers. It didn't work. But the important thing was that I ran away from the Hellbrute and the Demon Prince. So those 2 big, expensive, choppy, dead killy units did nothing, because the thing they were supposed to kill ran away. Now, he didn't need them, because the thing they were trying to kill were my Blade Guard, and they were already dead. But I kept that stuff from actually fighting for 1 turn, which it's Khorne, so you don't want it fighting at all. But so I got them positioned, and then the thing is that he then kind of he was tried to pile into my lines, and then piled his Hellbrute into my chaplain, who had the big punchy relic, with mortal wounds on
the Mace of Redemption, yeah.
And so he managed to kill that Hellbrute before that Hellbrute ever got a chance to fight him. And the way it worked out, I did lose my Blade Guard and Chaplain, or not Chaplain, a Primaris Librarian and all of that, and all my Blade Guard, but I managed to sort of outmaneuver him a little bit and get a cheeky Hellbrute kill in, beat up on some of his Berserkers, and kind of ruin his party a little bit, doing that exact same trick. So that's where you can use them to screen other units. Like if you have a valuable asset like Blade Guard or Terminators or a character, and you don't want it to get charged by something big and spooky like a Demon Prince or something like that, you get those things out in front, hope that they're making a lot of charges that turn, so they have nothing else. They have options, and there's an option that's a little bit higher than, oh yeah, my Demon Prince is just going to kill these bikes, so I don't care about them. I'm going to go, do this fight that really matters. So you can go, okay, interrupt, fight, run away. Now you get to do nothing.
Yeah, 4 CP is steep. It's steep. Don't get me wrong. I don't think I'm going to do that every game, but if you look at it, you read the board, and say, okay, if I do this, I will hold the objective, and that will swing the point totals for his beginning of his turn or beginning of my next turn. Absolutely worth it. If you just think, okay, 4 CP to turn this from me scoring 5 to me scoring 15. Yeah, all day long. Like I said, you could use it to move deeper, and you bounce out to go grab another objective.
Yep.
The possibilities are very much endless with what you can do with this. So that Swift Strike stratagem is very, very powerful. So the other thing I realized here is that I think I kind of overcommitted with like buy-in relics and buy-in warlord traits. I want more CP, right? And like this. So Dark Angels have a lot of really powerful tools, but to use those tools, you need command points. And most of your most powerful stratagems are 2 command points.
Yeah.
So having 2 CP available to you, 4 CP available to you is very important. So I would probably, in this case, pull back on investing in some of the warlord traits and really pair it back to what the vision is. And I think when we're done talking about your list, you can go back.
I was going to say, just hold on to this thought, because my list breaks all those command point rules, and I suffered. Oh, how I suffered for it.
All right. So overall, I think I met with some success. I definitely learned some lessons, and that's in shape what I'm going for. And I don't think I'm ready to finish writing those new lists yet, because I just want to do everything. And I'm a very toolbox style player. I like having like this unit in the list in case this situation comes up. I can use this tactic, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like I want a big alpha unit of plasma and scepters, or so I can weapons of the Dark Age and annihilate something. And I want a land speeder so that I can use targeting guidance. And I want a smash captain for all that. But yeah, I think with the Dark Angels, you really need to have a clear vision.
Yes.
More than almost any other chapter, because so much of what you do is tied up in those special wings.
Yeah.
You need to have a very clear vision of what your plan is and how you're planning on spending your command points. So, all right, let's move on to yours if you're cool with that.
Yeah, no problem. Just push a button here, bang, just like that. We
Boom.
have my list.
All right, so what I got for yours is scroll. Yep. All right, so for what we're looking at here, you ran an outrider detachment and a patrol detachment.
Yep.
So your outrider was a chappie on a bike with Mantra of Strength, Canticle of Hate, Master of Sanctity, and he is your warlord with Decisive Tactician to give +1 to advance and charge.
Mm-hmm.
Overall, I like this a lot. That's good. I'm a fan. Does Decisive Tactician work on just core, or is it characters as well? I think it's just core, right?
Well, I got my book with me. I'll check real quick. Well,
While you're saying,
we're
okay.
looking at that, but yeah, the idea behind it was that if I didn't get my canticle off, because I mean I could still technically fail it, I'd at least get something.
That's true.
And if I got the canticle off, then my bikes got, you know, the bonus gets doubled. So it was just sort of like building redundancy into the list kind of thing.
Okay, I like redundancy. It's a very important thing to consider. So the other thing you want to think about this is on turn 1, you're basically giving yourself a 24-inch move.
Yeah, it's
because
core.
Yeah, it's only core. Okay, so the chaplain himself does not benefit from that.
Correct.
So fair enough. Okay. Next, you had a fatty squad of 8 Ravenwing bikes. Tell me what's on your mind about this.
All right, so I'm practicing for a Highlander tournament March 6th, and so in this Highlander tournament, you're only allowed 0 to 1 data sheets of anything that's not troops or dedicated transports.
Right.
And
yeah.
so I was like, well, I'm committed to 1 squad of bikes, just like I'm committed to 1 squad of Terminators. And so when I built this list, originally the idea was, well, I'm just going to run 2 fatty ones just because I can, and it'll be really intimidating, and I have all these cool tricks, and I'll be really cool. And what we were just talking about with command points, the problem with a lot of those 2-point command point or stratagems that you were talking about is that if the squad is bigger than 5,
3.
they become 3. And I ran into that. But the 2 practice games I played last Friday, or sorry, the Friday before, because last Friday was yesterday for me.
Yesterday.
But this was the Friday before. I played a game yesterday, but it was not this. But it was 2 Fridays ago, and yeah, I was like, oh yeah, I could Swift Strike. Oh, if only it wasn't 3 command points because the squad is massive.
Right.
Let's hold
on that for a second, and let's keep moving.
Yeah.
So all right, so we got this big squad of 8 Ravenwing bikes. Then we have an Outrider squad, and then we have a Landspeeder Vengeance. All right. Why did you take the Landspeeder Vengeance?
Well, we discussed during our hot takes about the idea of, having that damage 4 plasma platform, and at 120 points, you had this plasma cannon platform on an invuln body that was faster than a tank, that you could then, there were some other Dark Angels tricks you can throw on it to give it a higher invuln to make it harder to hit, and then you could also, the thing that it can do, when you have this land speeder and the other land speeder that's in the list, which was one of the new ones, which I ran just because it was new, the brand new Storm Speeder, Thunderstrike one, yeah, is that there's a stratagem where you use your land speeder, you target one thing in your army, in the enemy army, and everything gets +1 to hit against it, your whole army, not just Ravenwing, but Dark Angels. So the idea is that you run everything, and this is what I tried to do, and it failed horrendously, is you run everything forward, you advance everything forward, so everything acts as, it's not an assault weapon, but it suffers the -1 to hit, and you can still shoot it. Right, so your heavies and rapid fires, but because you do this stratagem off the land speeder, you're back to full ballistic skill.
Yep.
And
so that's only in the Devastator Doctrine, though. That is only in the Devastator Doctrine, right?
Yeah. Right, and so I had to really, really commit turn 1, and I was playing my buddy Chris. He's really savvy, and he deployed back, and I had that whole, this is my first game with the new book, super hype, and I fell into he set a trap, and I fell right into it. So it's like, look at this cool thing I can do, Chris, with my new rules. And he's like, yeah, he was playing a Khorne Berserker, a World Leaders list. He's like, yeah, Khorne Berserkers, dude. All right, I don't know how many of you have to play against Khorne Berserkers, but when they are so disgusting. A 10-man squad of Khorne Berserkers.
You will know, yeah.
They delete bikes. They deleted this 8-man bike squad. They deleted it in 1 turn.
Oh, wow. Because the double activation rate.
Because they double activate, and then he can give them +1 to wound. They're already strength 5.
Veterans.
They get veterans,
Yeah.
and then there was something else he did to give them extra rend point, and he just melted them. I was like sitting there just in shock. I was like, but my beautiful giant squad of bikes dead.
Yeah. Oh, that sucks. Okay. All right. So we got 2 land speeders, the Vengeance and the Thunderstrike. So the Thunderstrike, in case you haven't really internalized that yet, Thunderstrike has a missile launcher.
Mm-hmm.
It has a 2-shot last talon, which is a 36-inch range last cannon.
This was the Melta one.
And this was the Melt one. Okay, yeah. The Thunderstrike is not that one. So
I wrote something down wrong then.
Okay. So the Melta one has a 3-shot multi-melta, basically. That's its big hot. Right? It's a 3-shot multi-melta. Right? And then he had a Dark Talon. Right? And we have talked about the Dark Talon on the show in the past. I'm going to come back and we're going to talk about the list, and we'll see what we do there. All right, so the patrol detachment, you have a Phobos Librarian with Engulfing Fear and Mind Wipe. So I'll tell you what I think about this is I think that trying to cast Warp Charge 7 powers without any sort of buff might be a little too hard to do. So I think that going for Warp Charge 7 powers, if you're going to rely on these as part of your game plan, you're probably going to want to have a Chief Librarian or Ezekiel. So you could upgrade the Librarian to a Chief Libby if you don't have Ezekiel. So that's just my take on it.
Well, if you think this is bad, wait till I tell you what I did with him, and you'll be even more horrendously mad.
Okay.
Is that, you know how Phobos guys, you can take them off the board and then redeploy them? I did that with him, and then realized there was nowhere to bring him in, so he basically just sat in reserve most of the game. It did nothing.
Oh, Bailey, you're killing me, Small.
It was awful. This was an awful game.
Okay, so we got the Phobos Libby, right? We got 3 5-man tactical squad, 3x5 tactical squads with missile launchers. So these clear your objective sitters / screening units, and then a big fat brick of Deathwing Terminators.
Now this.
So 2 Thunderhammer Storm Shields, 2 Thunderhammer Storm Shields, 6 Storm Bolters and Power Fists, and then 2 with Twin Lightning Claws and a Cyclone Missile Launcher each. So this is clearly your alpha unit.
It was. This thing was amazing.
I like this big alpha unit. In the Highlander format, I want to point out a couple things here real quick. So I think if you're playing for a Highlander format, which once again, you're limited to 0 to 1 data sheets or anything that's not troops and dedicated transports, Space Marines have the option to use the combat squads rules to great effect.
Yeah.
So what I think I would have done here, if you're taking a little bit of constructive criticism, is I probably would have dropped one of those tactical squads, and then I would have spent those points to put 2 more Ravenwing bikes in. That way you would have had 10 squad of Ravenwing bikes that you could have combat squadded. Right? And that will make it so that
I don't think you can go that big. I think you have to run an attack bike at that point.
I think maybe you can, but even still, attack bikes are only 45 points. Right. So you should be able to. And you can definitely squad those things. So let's take a look real quick and see what we can come up with.
I mean, I'm not the only person to take Battlescribe at its word when it says error, your squad's too big. And I made it down to where Battlescribe said I could.
Okay. Well, let's get up into the bike squads. So, okay.
Yeah, because this is
there you go. Book. Maximum is 8. It's in the core book, yeah?
Yeah, it's the core book.
Yep, you have the option to combat squad. So, yes, you can get... So, yeah, so I said, I still think that maybe switching to combat squad them, or in that case, if you drop one of the tactical squads, you can replace the other 2 with infiltrators.
Right, and so what's interesting is that the list I played last night, I completely, because these 2 games I played, it was enough of me just going, I don't really feel like I could do anything because I have the wrong units and I can't make, the units I have can't do what I want them to do because they're either too big and bloated like that bike squad, or they just don't have the impact like my tactical squads did. They didn't quite have the impact I wanted them to have. So I ended up dropping a lot of stuff and going with 2 Incursor squads because that's what I have, and I just like the punchiness of Incursors, and then the fact that their guns ignore a lot of the ballistic skill modifier tricks. So like if someone brings a Colossus Assassin, it's all like, you can't hurt me unless you roll a 6. It's like, actually I can just shoot you like a normal Space Marine guy can because I'm cool like that. and
Is
just
that kind of stuff prevalent in your meta? Like lots of
it's
Collectus,
not.
Eldar, and that kind of stuff? Harlequins?
I know people I know have them, and if I did think, and it's one of those things where like people have them, like I have one, a couple of my other friends have one, or have a few, and it's just one of those things where we know they exist, and if things got really cheesy really fast, we know somebody would bring them out, and so I just kind of have that in the back of my mind. I'm also getting used to playing with them because when Eldar come back and Eldar get their Eldar shenanigans. And I mean, because imagine, it would be the most Eldar thing ever is that if Craftworld Eldar get to ignore the negative cap. I know it's put in there to stop them, but
So
they've struggled so much without it that I wouldn't be surprised if they were the one faction that got it back. And I just want to be ready for it in case that happens.
I actually have I think I have a line on that. If you'll bear with me for a second.
No problem.
If you go back and look at the Deathwatch Codex,
Okay.
remember the Deathwatch have Xenos specific stratagems, and if you look at the Eldar one, it says it gives you the ability to ignore all hit and ballistic skill modifiers. So what I think the Eldar are going to look like is not only they're going to give you a -1 to hit, they're going to have stuff that modifies your ballistic skill. So effectively, you will have multiple penalties to hit, but it gives you a way to circumvent that that generic game rule of the -1 to hit stack. So that's where I think that's going, just based on the wording of that rule, because they wrote that codex with the Eldar codex in mind. I'm pretty confident.
Oh,
so because it's a strangely specific thing to say if it wasn't there for a reason. So
for sure, and incursors are going to be the answer to that, and they have I think their weapons naturally -1 in close combat, so
yeah,
so they'll end up being -2, so they're actually a little bit punchier than a regular intercessor at the end of the day. And they fit the more aggressive mindset that I have in my head.
Okay.
With sort of forward scout units, and that's why I pick them over infiltrators. They're a little bit cheaper too.
Okay, I've used infiltrators in the past. That's kind of the way I prefer, because I like the utility you get out of the deny bubble. I used incursors in 8th edition when I was doing like combined Space Wolf and Dark Angel lists for Lion and the Wolf, because turn 1 charging incursors are super good. But okay, so all right. So what was your first game against? You said it was against Khorne, right?
Yep, Khorne Chaos. There was a squad of obliterators in it, demon prince, some berserkers on foot. Was there berserkers in Orion? I don't think there were this game. Oh, they were. He was running the Forge World drop pod assault. You know what I'm talking about? Those things are ridiculously scary.
There's a huge one. There's the Caradon one, or the Caradros, or whatever, and then there's a smaller one that's the Dreadclaw.
I think these were the Dreadclaws, but these things, they have like neg 3, flat 3 damage close combat weapons, and they fly. Did you know this? They move.
No, that's the big one.
They hit the board, and then they move and fly, and they punch with neg 3 flat damage weapons. They're so scary.
Get wrecked, nerds.
Yes, basically.
My drop pods fight you. They fight you.
Oh, it was scary.
All right. Okay.
But so basically, the turn 1, I got to go first. He deployed back. I rushed everything into the middle because I was playing the deployment where you have the circle taken out of the middle, so you have that kind of weird shaped square with like a chunk of it missing, the one corner missing. No, the old seek and destroy deployment.
I can't say I'm familiar with that, but okay. So the deployment is table quarters with a chunk missing out. The old the old seek and destroy, the old table quarters. Okay. And how many objectives were there? Was it a 2-3 or a 1-2 game?
I think it was a 1-2-1. Yeah, 1-2-1 game.
Okay. 1-2-1 game with 5 objectives. Okay. So do you think you had enough OBSEC in this game?
I had plenty, in the sense because like the bikes were OBSEC and the infantry, the tac squads were OBSEC, so I wasn't too worried about that. The big thing for me is like this guy we play all the time, so we both kind of know each other's tricks and what we like to do. We always joke about Chris. His thing is everything is orcs if you try hard enough. and because he's an orc player at heart, and so that's why I think he's ended up playing Khorne Berserkers, just because he's one of those people who say, oh, Chaos Marines are bad. Like, people at his store say that all the time. He's like, fine, I'll play Chaos Marines and destroy you with them, so you stop saying that around me, because I think you're wrong. And he's just one of those kinds of guys. So he owns, it's his shop, and so people trade in and sell up, buy up, or whatever, and so he just acquires stuff. So he has several brothers that play, and then they have sons who play, so he has access to all sorts of armies. He's played Tau and everything, but right now he's on this Chaos Khorne kick, and he kind of knew, he saw the speed, so he deployed back. So I basically, like where your opponent came to you, I came to him, and I know I shouldn't have, because I played with Chaos Khorne Berserkers at the beginning of 8th when I was waiting on my Death Guard Codex to come out, and so I was running some goofy kicks out of Chaos Marines book. And because I thought mistakenly that I could use it to play with my new Death Guard models, and I couldn't. And so I was experimenting. I was playing Alpha Legion, playing World Eaters, and so I knew what Khorne Berserkers did, and I knew I shouldn't have done what I did, but because I had that new book smell on my nose, I was like, I'm gonna go out there and show Chris how this cool new stuff works. And I ran out there, I ran my Talon back into his back line. I targeted his obliterators. I shot everything at the obliterators, and I killed one of them.
Yeah. So, okay. So you think you had enough OBSEC. You have the speed to dictate the pace, but you moved in. Yeah, you moved into his territory, and you let him get the alpha strike off. So
yeah,
I think one of the things to pull out here is that when you have the speed, you have the ability to dictate the pace of the engagement. You should actually use that to dictate the pace of the engagement.
Yeah.
So we all know it's an objective game. So if you move a little bit, right, maybe just toe touch into that center objective, make it so that when he comes to you, you're going to punish him for it.
Yeah.
Set yourself up so that he's going to try and get the alpha strike off, and you swift strike away, something along those lines. Do you think that, like, looking back at it, do you think that combat squatting the bikes would have helped?
I mean, it might have, and part of it would have been because even Chris said at the beginning, he's like, why didn't you go to the flanks? And I said, you know what, Chris, you're right. I should have played the way I should play, which is, go out, like you're saying, dictate the play, spread him out, because he didn't really have a lot on the board to start the game, because I was looking at it, and I was kind of telling him, like, dude, I'm going to kill all your stuff. You don't have anything on the board. I'm going to run in there and kill stuff. And I forgot to do the hunt, which is what I should have done. So I wasn't up into his deployment zone as much as I thought I was going to be, and he deployed back. He didn't deploy on the line like I thought he was going to. So I wasn't able to get the charges in that I needed to actually do what I said I was going to do, and I was way super aggressive, played right into his hands, and just was extremely wasteful. I just played very uncharacteristically like myself, or it was very uncharacteristic for me to play the way I did that game, because I wasted everything. I wasted my bikes, my land speeders. I tried the whole 4 damage plasma cannon, rolled 1 shot. So don't do that.
It's a 2D 3-shot weapon.
Is it, or is it? I thought it was a D6 cannon.
No, in 8th edition it was a D6. Now it's a 2D3, a 2D3 blast.
Okay, well, I was using it as the D6, but even then, I probably still would have rolled 1 on each of those and only had 2 shots, and that was not worth the 2 command points. So yes, the increase in command points for Weapons of the Dark Age, that's a nerf. It hurts. Like, it is not just something you can do all the time, especially as Heath and I are talking about. We have all these other things that we want to do, and running that fatty squad of bikes when everything is so much cheaper command point wise when they're not so fat. Yeah, it's just, it needs to be done that way. Now, the one thing that worked, and Heath, you're gonna love this. This was beautiful. This Terminator squad, all right, because he comes into me, so he opens up his backline. I drop that Terminator squad to his backline because I took line breaker. Oh my goodness, Chris, these things killed everything. I mean, absolutely everything. So I drop them in the shooting phase, spin the command point so they don't count as having moved. So now they're all hitting on 2s. And those Cyclone missile launchers, instead of hitting on 4s, are now hitting on 2s because they're not getting the -1 for moving. Yep. And now they're going to the 2 because of the Dark Angels. And then
did you get to use the stratagem to +1 to wound?
Yes. So I have hitting on 2s, wounding on 2s, Cyclone missile. And so yeah, the chaos predator with 4 las cannons didn't make it through that. It just blew that right up. Killed a bunch of there was something nearby that I just killed a bunch. And what I don't think it was cultists, but maybe it was just some leftover berserker. There was something I shot it up really bad and they died because it was -1 because it was tactical because it was turn 2. Maybe it was
Yeah.
berserkers. Then I charge into the obliterators and this demon prince that just blew up my dark talon. Murder all of them. And then I mean he's murdering the rest of my army, my other bikes, my outrider bikes. My actually they did pretty well because I was able to keep them alive with my apothecary. Oh, he had a
Mm-hmm.
Karn, and Karn was like eating all sorts of stuff for breakfast. It was pretty bad. He's scary. Watch out for Karn.
Oh yeah.
But these Terminators, they drop in his back line, they kill his whole back line, and then they started to march back into the middle of the board. And I blew up in the missile launchers. I'm still shooting my missile launchers at things, and I'm blowing up. I think I may have gotten a drop pod with it. And then I'm shooting berserkers, charging into other berserkers, punching them with. And the lightning claws are so useful against non-big things because you're
Yeah, because
getting
they reroll
so
wounds
many
natively. Yeah.
attacks, and you get so many attacks because now they grant an attack for each claw, not one for the whole pair.
What? Hold on,
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
So those two guys are putting out 10 lightning claw attacks.
Holy crap!
And then if you put the missile launcher thing on them,
Wow.
right, they still get to shoot missiles because otherwise they wouldn't have any weapon shots. But yeah, so they are putting
Yeah.
out on the charge 5 attacks each. So that's 10 attacks out of those two guys. So, Marines, guardsmen, light Eldar aspect warriors are just like, the T3 squad that usually slow down your power fist Thunderhammer guys because the -1 hurts them. Yeah, we're not playing that game. These guys are getting in there and they're eating, and they just eat. And they were eating things. It was pretty good.
Those lightning claws. Okay, I didn't know that. I'm hot. I'm hot now. So that actually, to me, that makes relic terminators another thing to look at, because normally one of the problems with relic terminators was they had the lightning claw and they had a storm bolter, so you didn't get the benefit from the twin lightning claw, which was the +1 attack. But now they get the +1 attack and the reroll the hit or the reroll the wound. Oh man. Okay. All right. So how much? So did you were you able to use the implacable doctrine? Did that play into it at all? Like, were you able to reroll wounds against characters and
not that game, but in this. Well, yeah,
Okay.
I mean, in a way it did. Well, no, because I didn't get the things I killed. I could have used it on. I killed them all in the tactical doctrine.
Okay.
The game I played last night, I got to use it because the interrogator chaplain I used last night was jump pack guy, and so he got to do it against the Hellbrute. And then in the second game I got to use it because in the second game I played, I got the Terminators into a Civil Templars Dreadnought and a captain. Now I'm going to point this out. If you have not played against the Silver Templars, they're the White Dwarf.
The new Primaris chapter that came out in the White Dwarf.
There's something in that book, a relic or warlord trait, that makes their warlord ignore rend up to rend neg 2. And I didn't know this. And I charged my Terminators
like Sisters of
into
Battle
them.
style.
And so for 2 whole combats, my Terminators had to do damage to a dude with a 2-up save, and all of my Thunderhammers, everything did no AP to him because he ignored it. Now, when I got to turn 3 and I went into the implacable and everything went to neg 3, then he was on his 4-up invuln. But he was sitting there making 2-up saves on Power Fists and my Lightning Claws and my Thunderhammer because everything's neg 2 in there.
Thunderhammers are neg 3.
No, they brought them down to neg 2. That was part of the debuff for this edition. And I was very sore on that.
Because if they are, then because I really
now they're neg 3 in the assault doctrine. They are neg 3 in the assault doctrine, but they used to be neg 3.
Right.
But,
hey, look at that. Yeah, you're right.
But that was so if you have a Terminator bomb and you're playing that new White Dwarf thing, do not drop it on their warlord until turn 3. Because you are basically feeding your Terminators to that guy. And that's what happened. He managed to kill all my Terminators. But it took most of his army to do it in that game.
Don't you have? Well, you could use our doctrine manipulation stuff. You could use tactical appraisal if your warlord is near there to just jump them right into the devastator or correction the assault doctrine.
Yeah, and I would do that.
Yeah. So between that and the stratagem out of the main Space Marine book, which lets you be in all 3 doctrines,
which is good in this kind of squad where you have assault, heavy, and melee and rapid fire all in the same thing.
It's also really good for Ravenwing
Yeah.
because it gives you the additional movement and it gives you additional movement, and it gives you the additional AP for your weapons, and it lets you get into combat and have additional AP in combat.
Yep.
So I really like it on Black Knights.
Oh yeah,
So
I would definitely do that to a squad of those.
Okay, so the Terminators punched above their weight class is what I'm hearing.
Yes, it is, and this is where the command point things come in. Is that they are command point heavy, because you want to be, because with all those guys with the -1 to hit weapons, you want to be doing honor of the first or for the first, which is just the generic +1 to hit when you're fighting in close combat. When you don't get it from your traits, so like when you charge, when you move, you deep strike it and charge, you're not going to get the +1 to hit from the chapter tactic that first round of combat, and you want to ignore that -1 because you want to kill whatever it is you just hit. And then when you do that deep strike and you're going to shoot, then that's 2 right out the gate, because you're going to, at least for me, or the way I was running, because you have to ignore moving, give yourself that +1, and then you have to, which interestingly, you can give them that +1 to hit stratagem for Terminators applies in both the shooting and the fight phase. So technically, you could do that one and then save that other one for, like, let's say Inceptors, which are deep striking that you now want them to hit on 2s. So that might be something to remember, that you can do that. But anyway, that's 2 command points in your shooting phase, the turn they drop in. And then you're going to do it again, the +1 to hit again in the fight phase. So that's 3 command points in one turn that you've dropped on one squad. Granted, it's almost a 500-point squad, but that's a lot of command points. You can't, that's 15 points over a game.
One of the things I'd like to point out here is that I think one of the ways that if you're planning on using just a big fat squad of Terminators that have a minus, like a power fist. At that point, investing in Belial or Asriel is really worth it, because you can just use, the turn you drop in, you're not going to be able to do it because it has to happen in the command phase. But being able to say, all right, you're rerolling all hits, right? Reroll, like hitting on 4s, rerolling everything is basically like having a ballistic skill 2.5. It's going to be, you're going to be hitting on a little better than a ballistic skill 3. So you're basically saving those command points. And if you really need to make it stick, then you can use the +1 CP, or the CP to get +1 hit for Fury of the First. And then now your weapon skill 3, or you're hitting on 3s, re-rolling everything.
The other thing to do is a master, it doesn't have to be in a Master of Sanctity, but a Terminator Chaplain with Litanies of Hate. You drop them in, you do the whatever the stratagem is that lets you do one out of. I mean, you want to do it on the one for the bonus charge, but if you wanted to give them reroll hits, you could do it that way too.
Yeah, commanding oratory, so you could drop them in commanding oratory to do an out of phase litany to get the litanies of hate. And litanies of hate, one other thing I realized, that gives you rerolls to hit on characters.
Oh yeah, that's good.
Not just core. So I think one of the things I'm picking up here is that. Once again, Dark Angels being very CP intensive, it's very much resource management. So it is possible to stack a whole bunch of crap and make something ultra deadly, pure, super killy, but you really don't need that, right? So do you really need to hit on 2s here, or do you need to hit on 3s here? So you need to be able to know when you have to spend those CP to get that additional hit, and being able to having that mental model. Say, this is this combat output of this unit in this particular situation. I don't need to spend 2 CP here. 1 CP is going to do it, or no CP is going to do it.
Right.
So, I think that's a skill that mastery of will really help you play this army. So, I think that helps you in general, basically anywhere in the game, is knowing what your expected outcome is.
But particularly this army, like we've talked about, and I felt it. There were just things I was like, I could do this and that to save myself from getting a real hiding right here, and I couldn't do it because I had already spent the command points on extra warlord traits, on extra relics, and there are things that you just don't need them. Like I keep looking at Paragon of the Chapter, and I keep looking at my characters, and I go, well, this character can't fight more than once in a phase, so why am I making him this super missile when he could just die? And you have that stubborn tenacity thing, which is basically for, if you spend the command point to paragon that onto somebody, it's basically you're getting a half-costed death only in death does duty end, which is nice.
There's
But then
a lot of things
you're
that'll
banking
do
on the
for you,
fact that
but
that guy's gonna die.
yeah,
That's like I don't want to build a whole list around a guy. I mean, I'm not a Blood Angel Smash Captain player. I'm not building a list around a dude going in and intentionally dying so that he does maximum damage, because that list doesn't exist anymore. That rule is
yeah,
almost non-existent in the game. Like Corn Berserkers are the only people that got that, and they get it for free.
yeah. Okay, yeah. So, all right. So, do you think you had enough anti-tank firepower here? Because when I was looking at it, I wasn't quite sure if you would in all situations. Because you don't have any you barely have any rerolls. I don't think you have any
Yeah,
rerolls
no,
without.
there's
Yeah,
oh yeah, in terms of rerolls, not really at all. Uh, no, I can accept, and that's, and even in the list I ran last night, which was a big rework from what I had. I'm trying to find a way to get more in because I got bullied by a couple of hell brutes and obliterators and a demon prince again. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not. He's like, because I was playing Chris again, and Chris like, well, why didn't you just come into the middle and challenge me for these objectives? Like, I'm gonna kill you on primaries. I'm like, yes, because my 3-man bike squad is gonna go in there and survive fighting 2 hell brutes, a demon prince, and a venom crawler.
yeah,
Yes, Chris, I totally want to go in there and do that. No, I'm not doing that.
yeah.
I wish I could kill. If Space Marines were as cool as everyone says they are, yeah, my 3 dudes could do that, but they won't, and I'm not going to do that. Yeah, so this list, it doesn't have enough bullies, and it
To be
doesn't
clear,
have
it's got one really big bully, but
right.
maybe more than one. So yeah, I think I agree with you there. Like you need 2 queens, right? One
Yeah,
queen you can move away from. You need 2 queens, right? You need 2 bully units to really provide like because one unit you can just debuff it and or run away from it
yeah,
and prevent it from doing what it needs to do. You need 2, I think. So or
yeah,
a really fast one like Shining Spears.
yeah. Well, and that's like when I played Chris. He had last night. He had in this game. And, it's very similar to the one I played in the first game. He had his venom crawler. He had his drop pods. He had his terminators, which he dropped his terminators in on my terminators, and he failed his charge, and I charged him and murdered all of his terminators too. So that my terminator squad, so that's a drop pod, a land ray, or a predator, a demon prince, obliterators, and a 6-man terminator squad with all the corn berserker terminator squad. So that 10-man in that game at least. Even though I lost, I was very happy with it because they just murdered everything. Uh, So when you put your eggs in that basket, I'm not saying you're going to win with it, but man, I had a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun losing with my Terminators.
Yeah.
So if you're just about having a good time and playing Deathwing Terminators, that sort of mixed option, instead of just going all close combat with knights or all shooty with the regular guys, getting a regular squad of guys, mixing all the weapons in there, mixing up the different types so you can come in and just be an instant, I'm going to hit everything. I'm going to hit your tanks, I'm going to hit your infantry, I'm going to go in and smash your big unit. And they do that. They did that for me, and because they're so big, they have such a big footprint. They are kind of hard. They're hard, so they're sometimes hard to get into position. But once they're on the board, they're harder to get away from because it's such a big. That's 10 40 mil bases. I mean, you can't string them out like you used to, but
Yeah.
that's still a big footprint. And it's like when I played Chris last night, I double moved all my bikes and everything on my left flank away from half of his army. Like his Terminators came in to try and flank me, failed to charge. This other thing failed to charge, and I went, bikes go whoop far away from you, and basically took it all out of the game because now they're 5-inch move Terminators. I don't care that they all have combi meltas; they're all the way over there.
So
but yeah,
let me ask you another question here.
Sure.
Yeah. Did you ever consider using a Death to this Traitor stratagem from the main Space Marine book?
If I had command,
because I think
that
for 1 CP in the fight phase against Chaos, reroll all hits.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, so I think that don't forget that you've got another book to draw strategies from.
Yeah, that's something to remember. I got my 2 decks. Actually, I'm lucky, and I have both decks of cards because I know some people still don't even have their Space Marine Core Codex cards, but I had both, and I was sitting there flipping through them all. The thing that is missing for bikes that it hurts because I really needed it in all 3 games I played so far, and I have not had it, is you cannot put an invuln on bikes in combat anymore. It was in the index, and it is not in the book, and you cannot do it, and it hurts because I'm like, I need an invuln on my bikes in close combat,
How
and
how often
not
do you
there.
run up against stuff that's more than -2 AP in combat? Because if power fists and thunder hammers aren't, like, it's like, okay, like power
Yeah.
swords are -3, right? Lightning claws are -2. Like most of the stuff without thunder hammers, most stuff's -2. So it really, I don't think it's that big of a deal.
Right. I
Especially
ran
because,
him
yeah,
into some well, I guess it's the power swords is where you got to watch out for because those are
okay.
an egg
So
3.
they're, yeah, they're 1 damage. Like you got 3 wounds on each dude. So I'm not sure. I don't know if I agree with you on that.
Well,
I think that,
the
yeah,
demon prince ones aren't 1 damage. I will point that out, but I
okay,
shouldn't be
fair enough.
charging. It's like they got
You
charged by
shouldn't be charging
I
demon
didn't
princes
charge the
bikes
demon
anyway.
prince. It charged me, and it's 3 damage. And I was like, oh yeah, let me just start
Yeah.
picking up my bikes.
Okay. Yeah, that's okay. All right. So, all right, let's move on to your second game. What was your second game?
So I was playing the new Silver Templars list.
Okay.
From
What was the mission?
that one was classic Dawn of War. So you've played long enough because you've been playing
Yep.
longer than I have. Like whenever someone rolls a mission that has the Dawn of War deployment, just a little bit of my heart just opens up because it's like, oh, this is how Warhammer is supposed to be played because this is how we used to play Warhammer all the time. Because I always end up playing that silly Seek and Destroy. Whenever I roll, I always ended up in 8th edition playing Seek and Destroy, and I'm like, I hate this one. Why can't I have some decent Dawn of War? And so I had that one. This was one where there was 2 in my deployment zone, 2 in the middle, 2 in his deployment zone, in sort of 2 different triangles.
Yeah. Okay.
I will point out in both games, I took the secondary, the Death on the Wind, the Raven Wing thing, and that is hard.
Oh yeah, how'd that work out?
That is
Yeah.
so hard.
Okay.
It was not because I was wasteful because I was throwing my guys to death. So the things that could have scored it were all dead before I had a chance to really do it. And you have to kill. It's not a. It's you got to move and either shoot something to death or you got to move and charge it and kill it.
Charge something. Yeah.
And when I'm running into power armored bodies and it's early, again, this is where I should have waited, held my bikes in reserve and waited. Charging into power armored bodies with only AP -1 weapons, or use my stratagems to get more AP on one of my bike squads. They aren't going to clear out because he ran a lot of Primaris. He had like an all Primaris army for the most part because this is one of the other guys down there. His name's Tyler. He has a lot on his main list is Tyranids, but he's sort of just someone gave him a great deal on Marines, so he bought him and he's like, yeah, I'll just try this random thing out of the White Dwarf because nobody else is playing it. So he's like, I don't want to be a Cheese Lord Dark Angels player and just play the new hot meta. So I'm gonna play this random thing out of a White Dwarf. It doesn't even have a real book. It doesn't have all the stratagem support and everything else, right? So he just kind of threw something on the board, and this is where I got really mad at this list. It's like, this guy literally just threw whatever he had that he bought off somebody else secondhand on the board, and I struggled. And I was like, I should not be struggling against this, and I did. He had a lot of Primaris bodies, and I just didn't have the firepower to kill all of it. And, I thought I did, and I just didn't, and...
Okay.
And that was pretty rough.
So, like you're talking about shooting firepower. So we're talking about like 20, 30 Primaris Marines, just 3 up armor save, 2 wounds, with the option to get trained human physiology. So you've got a multi-shot melta gun, you've got that rift cannon, you've got a lot of bolters. Yeah, and so this is where like the non-overcharged land speed or vengeance should be fine. Which is 2d3 shots, it's got blast. So if you've got a squad of more than 5, which you're probably not going to see these days because most people see that coming, that thing should be able to kill 2 or 3 Marines a shot, even without putting any additional resources.
That required me to roll more than one shot, though. That's what I kept running into.
Yeah.
So there's just some things that aren't for me. Maybe they're for you because you're one of those people, but there are things that are not for me. Like last night I was playing with my Blade Guard, and I had a 5-man Blade Guard. I was like, I can tank these Berserkers. I can do it. 10 wounds, no problem. Watch this. 4 up save. 1s and 2s, 7 1s and 2s. And I'm like, all right, they're dead. I had an apothecary over there too. Now the one thing that was fun that I got away with last night is that I brought my librarian that time, just like you, and I put him in the impulsor like you did, and I put him in there with my Blade Guard, and he came out, and I had my apothecary next to him, so I started trying to cast spells, And so this guy's playing he's got the special corn thing where like his guy can deny, and if you deny, you suffer perils automatically. So he does it to me, and he's like, all right, you take perils, okay? Roll 1 perils, okay. 6 up Field of Pain, got it, like a boss. I was like, what up? I perils and I didn't die, so
and I didn't die.
So that felt pretty. I mean, I wish I could have my spell, but it also felt pretty cool to be like, hey, I did my cool thing to make you suffer. Now suffer, fool. And I'm just like, nah, dog, that ain't for me.
All right, so you think you need more shooting? So like being like teching against Primaris Marines is a good choice, right? There's something like you have a 1 in 3 chance of playing against a Marine list.
Yeah,
pretty much. If you just walk out into the room and say, who's down for a game? So being able to kill T4, 2 wound, 3 up armor safe models is something that we need to be able to do. Traditionally, the answer to this is like the Stalker bolt rifles, right? The plasma. I see what you're saying about the land speeder benches. Ideally, so yeah, what I've done with it in the past was back when Centurions were the big thing, like the big hotness.
Oh yeah.
I was like, okay, I need to get reliable 4 damage stuff. I was like, land speeder vengeance, baby, this is it, let's go. But when it was 1 CP, and if I rolled a low number of shots, okay, no big deal. And that was when we had CP regeneration as well. But in this case, maybe if you do consistently have problems rolling like with hitting. Maybe the Relic Contemptor Dreadnought with the dual heavy plasma cannons.
I've played that a few times on your recommendation, Heath, and yes, that thing is amazing. And I was playing around in Battlescribe. Why is it cheaper than a regular one? There's something wrong in either, if that's accurate. I don't have the Imperial Armor book, but if somebody does,
diamond hands, baby.
please tell me why something with 2 plasma cannon battery or 2 heavy plasma cannons cost 10 less points than a regular Contemptor Dreadnought. Is it because of the command point? The command point tax, is that priced into it? But I was like, how does this make sense? And in that one, I throw the Cyclone missile launcher on that thing too. I'm gonna figure out how to put one of them. If I get one, I'm gonna figure out how to put my ones from my Deathwing Terminators onto the back of that Contemptor, so that way I don't have to spend oodles of extra money. And it's Deathwinged, appropriately Deathwing themed. When the time comes. Yeah. But yeah, oh my gosh, that thing is amazing. And then you put your Primaris Tech Marine next to it, giving him +1 to hit so he can move around and still hit on 2s, and you can heal him up if they shoot at him. Oh, beautiful.
And he can fit into your Deathwing detachment too.
Yeah.
Because you can pay like 15 points and give him the Deathwing keyword.
And he gets those rerolls if he has to punch.
And he's got core. Well, so the Relic Contemptors are generally 2 ranged weapons. They don't have the punch, right? They don't have the fist. It's the Contemptor that has the fist. The Relic Contemptors generally have 2. So I don't know, like if you're running into problems with it, that might be a solution. Like I like the idea of the land speeder version, but I think that you would probably have to have more than one to really make it like reliable. And the fact that it doesn't get rerolls really kind of takes away some of the attractiveness for me.
Yeah.
So that's when like you have to start budgeting to use targeting guidance, and if you're going to use targeting guidance and weapons of the Dark Age at the same turn, now that's like 4 CP, and it's a whole thing.
Yeah. So I guess to wrap up on my list and kind of get us towards a natural conclusion, I'll let you know based on sort of like what you've said. Like I've taken that into practice. So like I said, I've previously in the video or in the podcast, I played a game last night, and there were some big changes. Like the big fatty squad of bikes gone. Got 2 small squads. Got a squad of regular bikes. Got a squad of outriders. I just realized I need more anti-tank, and I could technically start running attack bikes, and I have a couple of them. So maybe that's where it should be.
So what about this? How about this? I can't speak to the points right now because I'm not doing the math in my head, but we could chat about it later if you want. Attack squads are a different data sheet, so that would fulfill your Highlander requirement. And then remember, you can put 2 special weapons into a bike squad, right? And then a combi weapon on the sergeant. So put 3 melta guns into that bike squad, and then maybe attack bike in it with a multi melta, and then put a squadron of 3 attack bikes, and that's a lot of anti-tank. Another thing that you may consider is just dropping the tactical squads entirely,
which I did.
And if you have one, like if you have one once again, okay, this recommendation is going to kind of move out of the Highlander format, but bear with me for a second,
No,
and
it's
maybe
so
we can
fine.
turn this into something. So if you move away from the tactical squads entirely, maybe you have like one infiltrator squad. Then one of the things I'm thinking about is using small attack bike squads as my objective setters because it's T5. It's got a 5-up invul. It's got a 4 pivot advances. It's got 4 wounds, right? You look at it and like that is just hard enough to kill, but I don't know if I'm actually going to be able to kill it by shooting something random at it. I'm gonna have to think about it, right? And then if I stand still, he's shooting a multi-melted hitting on or a heavy bolter and hitting on 2s. And having a random heavy bolter in your pocket for the Hellfire stratagem is definitely a good thing.
Oh yeah.
And then if someone's like, I'm going to shoot something, all right, 1 CP, 4 up, and we'll save. So having 1 or 2 of those guys sitting on objectives, and then late game they can turbo boost.
Well, and -1 to hit with skilled riders.
Yep. Yeah. So once again, however much defensive you want to throw into them, I think having those guys sitting on objectives might not be a bad plan. Because one attack bike is 45 points, with a multi it's 55. Right. So they are cheaper, and they get you a strong long range gun. And they're a little harder to interact with maybe than Marines are. Yeah, it's 10 wounds versus 4, but T5 with an invul save.
Yeah.
So, and if you have 2 attack bikes, that is the same price as the tactical squad.
Yeah.
Just 2 less wounds, higher toughness, and an invul save.
Yeah.
And once again, way more late game mobility. So once you've gotten all the objective points you need to get on turn 4, turn 5, those guys can just.
Yep.
Right. So, and then, so maybe if you have like a bike squad, and then you have an attack bike squad, and then you have a Black Knight squad, and then your Outriders. You've got 4 different data sheets.
Yeah.
That could all, and then I would try and find a way to make it, instead of the minimum size 3-man units, make them 4 or 5-man units for the Black Knight and the bikes, because you just get that much more ass to hold objectives. And I think 5 is right about the sweet spot because you get enough shooting out of them, and they have enough mass to really hit a target and do some work.
And they're under the bonus tax on a lot of the stratagems at 5 too.
Yeah, and they're not vulnerable to blast templates. So maybe if you went away from either you keep the 1 squad of incursors, or just ditch the second patrol entirely and went with another squad or Outriders, or. Well, no, because you had that second squad of Outriders. Once again, I may be working off old data here, but you wanted to have the Deathwing Terminators in there. So
I actually dropped them and wasn't too bad because I was thinking, like, we were talking about command points, so I dropped them for 5 Blade Guard and an Impulsor because now they do basically the same thing, but they don't need command point. They don't do all the shooting necessarily, but in terms of punching, they do a lot of the same thing. But it's cheaper, and I have the Storm Shield across the whole squad instead of 2 models.
So I would consider with your Librarian, if you can get a way to get Righteous Repugnance in there.
Oh yeah, I got that.
Because and then find a way, get him that +1 to cast.
Got that.
They do something. Once again, you need to have a way to get them in. The delivery is key, right? And get them in there where they need to go. You don't even necessarily need to put the Librarian in there with them, right? If you can get just a regular Librarian, give them a jump pack, and that gives you room to put like a Blade Guard Ancient in there.
Right.
The Blade Guard Ancient gives them +1 to hit, and if you give him Dependent Remembrance, now they can be -1 damage.
Yep.
Or you can give him, because he's an ancient, you can give him Steadfast Example so that they're OBSEC, and if you roll that Ancient up next to anybody else, or actually screw the Blade Guard Ancient, make him a Ravenwing Ancient in your other detachment, then he's got full throttle. And I think that full throttle is one of the more, like, because you have that Ravenwing Ancient with Steadfast Example or with Rites of War. I don't know why you would take Rites of War. If you take Steadfast Example, it's just better. Full throttling him around moves his aura, and his aura, when it multiplies your OBSEC, is a weapon. It is a weapon. You're like, oh, I got 3 guys in this thing. Now I got 6 guys. What's up, nerds? Right? And if you can get 5 guys in an objective, now you got 10. Right? So just being able to move that, there's nothing they can do about it. Your opponent cannot interact with that. And if you have Black Knight bikes, then that means you can have a grenade launcher, right? And so if you have 5 Black Knights, that's 4 plasmas. So that's 8 plasma shots, which can overcharge, which can weapons, and they're OBSEC, right? They're not OBSEC, and their core. I don't think you have anything that benefits from that's gonna throw a reroll aura, but other than maybe the chaplain. But so I think if you just kind of decentralize and make smaller numbers of stuff so that you can push and pull in very specific places. And that Blade Guard, I think the Blade Guard I'm actually kind of cooling off on Deathwing Knights now that I think about it, because I just think they're so killy. They'll kill anything, but they
they're
kill
clunky.
too much, right? They're too killy. You don't need to pay 47 points to kill what they go to kill, when a 160 point unit of Blade Guard do the same thing. Do the same thing, right? They have one less armor save and they have one less weapon skill, but that is eminently manageable with all the tools that Dark Angels have available to them. And they've got with all those and the fact that they're Primaris gives them access to a couple of other things, right? Because you can, they have what is that Primaris combat stratagem where if you roll a 6 to hit, you automatically wound?
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
I
don't remember the name of it, but I know what you're talking about.
So if you use that with Blade Guard, right, they're under the influence, especially of that Cup of Retribution. So now they're, instead of 25 attacks, they're doing like 30 on the charge, because it does stack. If you pop that, right, so now 6 of them are automatically going to wound. And then if you're under Righteous Repugnance, you could reroll all hits, so you can chase those 6s, and you're still probably going to be hitting on 2s, hitting on 2s or 3s. So that's just, you're going to get 8 or 9 automatic wounds, and then you're going to go to your wound step with all the rest of the dice, and then reroll all those anyway.
Yeah.
So I really think that a Blade Guard, unless you're playing a specific list, or if you're just pulling, you need one bully Deathwing unit that people are going to be scared of, the Blade Guard are going to do it for you. I really think they're a strong contender, because the Knights are too killy, and Terminators use a lot
of skill and a lot of command points.
Yeah, you can use a lot of command points. Terminators, if you bring Belial, if you bring Azrael, I think you could really mitigate the command point drain the Terminator is going to put on you. But that's a different style list than what you have. And the Deathwing or the Dark Angels as a whole, I think, are really going to benefit from a focused style of play with a few tools in the toolbox. But if you just kind of lean into what you're looking for and don't hamper yourself down with giving yourself options for edge case scenarios, your dash sheets and your basic rules, or your Jink and your inner circle, are going to be strong enough to bring you through just about everything you need to do. So,
yeah, no, I agree with that. It just falls into my overall philosophy with Marine armies, for any kind of Marine. If you play any other kind of Marines, is if you're struggling, it's probably because you're playing a lot of your faction's specialist units, and they require an awful lot of work and babying to work. Just go play with the basic core book. Just go get all your vanilla units out. Play with your Blade Guard. Play with your intercessors. Play with that stuff. Figure out how your combat doctrines, your super doctrines, your chapter tactics, all your little things interact with those units. Get really good at using it with those units, and then you'll be able to probably find the skills you need and the playstyle you need to use your more specialized units.
That is a fantastic piece of advice. I can't agree with you more wholeheartedly. First, master the basics.
Yeah.
Right? You can't start doing backflips until you know how to walk, right? You gotta get the basics down first, and they have to be as natural as breathing, right? Understand your movement phase, understand your target priority, and what stuff you can bring to the board, and what your chapter tactic and your super doctrine actually does for you. And once you have that stuff cold, then you can bring your specialists in. That pays double for the Dark Angels, because we have so many specialists, and they have so many of their own rules. So understand the movement phase, understand how you need to move, and especially with the way that the 9th edition objectives is understanding how you move to screen your opponent from accessing objectives, using the big oval bases on your bikes to control people's access to objectives, and using the movement you get to do that is going to be, I think, is one of the key skills you have here. So.
Back to basics. That's what I learned. Back to basics.
Back to basics. Told my sailors all the time. Back to basics. If you master the basics, everything's going to be okay, right? Because a strong foundation in the basics is how you win games. It's how you win. It's how you win wars. So,
Yeah, that's how you win Warhammer too.
yep. Yeah.
So you got anything else for us here,
No.
Heath?
Oh, I got about 2 fingers, maybe 3 left in this beer, but no, I think this is a good start. So be a good critical assessment of your successes and failures is key to improving in any process. Once again, that's something I learned very very hard in the military. It took me 15 maybe 15 years to really internalize that, but so I said, I mean, yeah, maybe I don't think I was being too hard on you, but you got to ask pointed questions to yourself when you're trying to, okay, why did this work? Why didn't it work? Right? Yeah. Is one of the, let's say I was in the nuclear, in case anybody didn't, pick up from the stuff behind me on the street. I was in the nuclear power field of the United States Navy, and our kind of patron saint was Admiral Hyman Rickover. He's invented nuclear power for the naval for the Navy. And one of the things that he said that was on the wall of my office when I worked at a submarine squadron was, success teaches nothing, only failure teaches. Yeah, only failure teaches, right? So you have to take the failure and look at the lessons you learn from that.
There was right? A lot and then of that with this list.
Yep. So once again, failure teaches. Yep. So look at that, why this happened, what's the root cause, break that down, and then take a turn. Now don't change too much too quick, but 2 or 3 games, like, hey, I'm continuing to have the same problems. Yeah. All right, we'll make a change and we'll test it and we'll see how it goes. So all right, man.
Well, thank you
I think
all
we
for
did
listening.
It. Let's get out of here.
To this special episode of Path to Redemption, the Warhammer 40,000 podcast for Dark Angels players. Our next episode, as Heath said, will be sometime in March, and I will have some tournament results by then, or for that episode. But until then, I'm Bailey from Dank Wargaming.
This is Heath with Team Table War Hawaii.
Stay loyal, Angels.